So, how long were you in India?
I spent, actually the total time that I spent in India was just 5 years. And then after that, I ended up moving over here to the US. So, but prior to that, as I said, from Kuwait, we would keep going, every vacation, every summer vacation, we'd spend 3 months. But the time after the war, I spent 5 years in India.
Mm-hmm. And what brought you to the US?
To tell you the truth, I did not fit in to India at that point of time. I think it was more the fact that I had been sort of forced to live there, as a result of the war, as opposed to a choice that I had made. And so, at the first sort of opportunity that I got, I was like, I want to move out and I want to explore my horizon, just like my father had done. I was like, I want to see what else is there. I am also a biomedical engineer. So one of the things that interests me just as much as music is the whole, the logical part of engineering, physics, mathematics. These are things that I truly love. They're also things that I try a lot to bring into my music also. But really that's what it was at that point of time, I was still sort of figuring out, what I wanted to do. I loved the engineering side of things. And I started looking at the US as a place where I could go and study more. So that's kind of what brought me here to the US.
So you came for college, or?
I came here for college,
Yeah.
yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So what were your first days here like?
So I came to Texas A&M to study, and that's in College Station, Texas. It's a small town. This is the late 90s. Lovely town, lovely university, lovely atmosphere. But I think, again, the internet was not as prolific as we know it nowadays. So while I love the whole university side of it, my studies were going great, everything was going very well. The thing that I missed the most was not having an avenue to showcase my music. Yes, there were a few sort of student organizations and, again, informalized, homes where people would say, yes, come and sing, we have a festival going on. But I missed the sort of formalized structure that used to be there, that, we were used to seeing.
Right.
So.
Were you able to go to like other U.S. cities that had more, like Houston or something that had more of infrastructure? Or...
So that was actually...
I know it's not close.
Yeah, Houston was 2 hours away. I didn't have a car at that time.
Right.
But that's interesting was, Houston was the biggest city, and I had been told that that's where, all the music related activities were. So I think certainly those were things that as a student we definitely did want to look at the bigger cities, because they definitely had much more infrastructure, had a lot more opportunities for upcoming musicians. Again, it was just a combination of things where I was, busy studying. I was a, poor graduate student, was busy teaching classes, labs at the university, and trying to figure out my own schedules and classes and things like that. So I didn't get as much of an opportunity during my my engineering days over here. But yes, certainly looking at the big cities was what, we all did to say, yes, that's certainly somewhere, we should end up going and looking at places to perform and things like that, yeah.
Were you still studying with Indian gurus at this time?
No, once I moved, sadly, a lot of my music, the actual formalized learning of it actually came to a screeching halt for a couple of years. The reason being, as I said, at that time, we didn't have, as prolific as the internet is today. It's hard to imagine a time, when the internet was not as prolific. So for a couple of years, my music came to a screeching halt. The only place where I would be able to do things is when we had gurus coming from India and they would conduct these workshops. I would make it a point to go and attend all these different workshops and try to learn. But again, the thing is, workshops are they're of a limited span of time, and you're again with a big group of students that's learning. So I miss that individualized attention but something is better than nothing. So as far as possible, I would try to attend all the workshops of all the visiting gurus who were coming in, and they were kind enough to sort of, agree to have me attend, even though I was not sort of had formally learned with them. But just, I think they were kind enough to say, yes, come in and join, just because I wanted to learn, and not having that access to learning was something that I missed a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Were you introduced to different styles as these different visitors are coming through, or what was that experience like?
Sure. So each teacher brings with them, certain nuances that may be different than what you have learned from your teacher. In my case, it was, with my mother, and then with my other formalized teachers in India. But all of these gurus had something that was unique to them. And so it was, in the workshop, what would happen is I would realize that there was something unique about it, but the workshop was not long enough for me to sort of understand and implement what was so unique about it. The nice thing is, though, it was, at least we had cassette tapes and recorders where we could go in and record everything. And so I would come back and spend a lot of time listening to it, and I would say, there's something that they did there which is different than what I have done. And I would listen to it enough, almost on like a loop, to figure out what they had done. Whereas I think if you had constant access, you would just go to your teacher and say, hey, I know you did something here, what did you do? So a lot of it was going back and figuring out on your own, which in itself is actually a very, very good practice. To go back, listen to what, either you have done or someone else has done, try to figure out for yourself what has been done, because that's learning that sticks with you. A lot of times that's, in fact, it sticks with you longer than if somebody were to just tell you, this is what I've done.
Right, cool. So after you graduated, what did you do?
I ended up, I did all the family things, ended up, I guess, working. I worked for a startup company. Didn't leave me much time for music. So for a couple of years, it was just more, I was keeping up with my, it was just more of a thing where I would make sure I was continuing my daily practices, but I was not performing at all. Just because, as I said, at that point of time, I had, young kids, worked for a startup which took up a lot of my time. Any spare time that I had was used for music, but it was more just to make sure that, because for me, music, it's like brushing your teeth. You can't imagine a life without brushing your teeth, right? You don't question, should I brush my teeth? Do I have to do it today? I don't feel like it. Yeah, it may not be the most exciting thing in the world, but what we call riyaz, which is a certain practice that you do, that is inherently part of your life. As I said, the thing that I can best liken it to is brushing your teeth. You don't brush your teeth just because you have to go out for a party in the evening. You just brush your teeth day in and day out, twice a day, like it or not. It's not the most exciting thing, but you do it. So a lot of the time then when I was working after I graduated was spent in just keeping up this riyaz and trying to figure out, I realized that I'm going to be in the US for a while. What is the best way that I need to find a guru who either is based here or somebody with whom I can have a continuing relationship, because I missed that. I missed somebody that was, taking me on a journey. So that part of it was sorely missing. And somewhere in that search, I did end up finding my current guru, who I've been learning with for, I think, 16, 17 years now.
Great. And how did you find?
So, so she actually was visiting for a workshop, and I called her up, and I just went for the workshop, and I said, I'm very interested to learn. She is a very well-known musicologist in Bangalore, very senior musician. So I was very interested to sort of learn with her at some point of time, and it's almost like fate brought her to where we were. And of course she was visiting, where she was visiting was an hour away, but still called her up, and I said, hey, I want to come and learn. So it started off with a workshop that she was doing, and I finished the workshop. And then this was probably 2003, 2004, where we already did have, a good not necessarily the most robust internet structure, but we had very good phones at that point of time. So I said, I'm very interested in learning. I know you're leaving back for India. What can we do? And she said, well, I'm still going to be here for about 4 months. So why don't we start this? Let's see where it goes. Let's not have sort of this thing of where, oh, I'm going to do this long term. So let's just start and see where it goes. So for about 4 months, I would go every weekend to her house, and I would learn with her. And then at the end of those 4 months, she said, well, I'm now going back, my visit is done, I'm going back to India. We can explore what a phone lesson would look like. And that's how it started. Was I continued my lessons on the phone for the longest period of time, and then I would visit. Of course, even now I visit pretty much every year. I take 3 months off, I go visit, and I study with my guru every year. But in addition to that, because she's very particular that lessons have to be face to face. She says there are nuances that you cannot convey through, as great as technology is, there are just nuances that you cannot convey. And I see this too. When I'm sitting in front of her, and I sing a particular line, and her eyebrow will suddenly move up, and I'll be like, I know I sang something. There's something about her expression which says, I didn't either sing it well or something was not quite right, and we can immediately stop and correct it. And sometimes with technology that is lost, because as I said, as robust as the internet is, there's still a time lag, there's still delays, which when you're looking for minute corrections and sort of trying to really get to a stage of perfection, you want all these small things which even if people don't say, sometimes the body language conveys it. And so it started off, as I said, with the phone lessons supplemented with my in-person visits. And then as Skype became more ubiquitous and now FaceTime and all these other things, we sort of continued that.
Okay.
That process.
Yeah.
Nothing beats face-to-face though, which is
right.
why I still make the trek to learn.
So where were you at this time?
So we were actually in California at that point of time, because that was the land of the startups. So when this whole thing started, I was in California at that time. And then I guess somewhere somewhere during this journey, we ended up moving to North Carolina.
Okay.
So.
And yeah, I'm still having trouble with the idea of a phone lesson. What was that like?
It's not ideal, and if I think about it today, it's not ideal at all, because we're so used to seeing, sort of having FaceTime and being able to see people. A phone lesson was certainly not ideal, but it was either that or nothing.
Right.
And I missed that sort of relationship and that continuous journey. That was what I missed most. Having just these workshops, the idea that I would again not see somebody for maybe 6 months, or that I would not see her for 9 months until I made the journey to India, was just not an appealing prospect for me, because I am still very much a student. I still have lots of things to learn, and the only way this happens is when you are in constant sort of guidance under a guru. So for me, the idea that I would not have that constancy was something that was, that was something that I was quite unhappy about. And so when she said phone lesson, I said let's try it. It was not ideal by any means, but it was something better than nothing.
Right. So, just so that since we're trying to do record keeping here, can you give us your mother's name?
Sure, my mother's name is Tara Prasad.
Okay. Can you spell the first name?
T-A-R-A.
Okay.
Last name Prasad, P-R-A-S-A-D.
Okay. And your current guru's name?
My current guru's name is Vidushi Vasanta Madhavi. So Vidushi is her honorary title. Her name is Vasanta Madhavi. Do you want me to spell it out?
Sure.
V-A-S-A-N-T-H-A-M-A D-H-A-V-I. I feel like I'm in the spelling bee.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Are there other names that you want to record at this point?
I've had a lot of gurus, but these, I think my mother and Vidushi Vasantamadhi have been sort of they've played a very, very important role in my life. I've had other gurus, other people with whom I've taken workshops, who have also played, their own roles in my life. But I think in terms of, just keeping it fair to everyone, I think my mother and Vidushi Vasantamadhi have been people with whom I've learned the longest and who have brought about, they're the people with whom I've had the longest relationship.
Great. Okay, thanks. So, when did you start making music more of your life again?
It was actually when I moved to North Carolina that when I moved here, I moved to Cary, which when we first moved here, I was like, oh no, I've again come to a small town which may not have the sort of infrastructure that I'm looking for. But to my pleasant surprise, as soon as I moved here, just by virtue of the fact that our connectivity had gotten so much better, that I was immediately able to find a lot of like-minded musicians, professional musicians, amateur musicians in this area who very warmly welcomed me and said, hey, you've moved to, this upcoming area. We have, we're just waiting for people to move here. We're waiting to make music. So it was almost within 2 months of moving here that I felt like I had been living here all my life. And that's really when, I have to thank all the other musicians that were here before me, musicians and artists, not necessarily musicians, but people even connected with musical organizations, people who are, dancers, classical dancers who said, hey, there's, people that I can introduce you to, because it's a network at the end of the day. And they were kind enough to sort of say, we're going to put you in touch with all these people. And at the end of the day, it's just this network that has kept evolving. And I'm so happy to say that I have so many musician friends. They are musicians, yes, but they're also my friends. And to me, that's the best combination that you can have.
Great. How did you find it? You just Googling or?
What happened is I have to again credit we have a temple in Cary. It's a Hindu temple. A lot of the Carnatic music that I sing has its roots in devotional music. And so the temple is a natural place where we go to offer our prayers. A lot of times, just like other people would chant prayers, I sing my prayers. So as soon as I moved, when we moved here, we came to know that there is a Hindu temple here in this area. And I went to the temple and I sang. And it was in fact the priest at the temple that said, oh, you sing. Let me put you in touch with, the other people who are here in this area. So it was in fact the priest at the temple that got me connected. And it was just one person, as I said, that I called and I introduced myself. And they started to put me in touch with other people. So that's how it happened.
Yeah. So what was the infrastructure like at that time when you first moved? What year was this?
So when we moved here, it was, I want to say 2000, maybe 6. 2006, around that time. Surprisingly, when I moved here, I didn't expect to find the kind of infrastructure that I found. There was actually formalized organizations already over here that were in the process of making, Indian classical music and dance known to audiences at large. There were already established, professional performing artists in this area who are already here. There were a lot of amateur, there still are a lot of, a wonderful mix of people that perform professionally, people that are amateur musicians, people that are somewhere in the whole, spectrum. So even at that point of time, wonderful infrastructure in terms of having opportunities for us to come together and make music. So whether it was informalized venues, like people's homes, people would say, hey, come and sing for us for an hour. And that was an occasion for us to make formal music, but in an informal venue. And then there were other formalized venues, like the temple itself would say, we're having this, festival. Can you all come and sing for an hour? Can you come and perform for an hour? And that was more of a formalized venue. So it was this mix of formalized and informalized venues that I found, which even to this day I really love, because a lot of times it gives you the ability to try out different things, to test out different things based on what the venue is and who the people are that are coming.
Mm-hmm.